At the end of your life, what will be your legacy? What will you leave behind for future generations? For the world, join the World Messenger, Izabela Lundberg, each week as she brings you a new distinguished guest from the business, sports, or entertainment world to share their success, their struggles, and their lessons. They will share their insights into current hot topics that affect everyone. Izabela facilitates an intimate, vulnerable environment to find the true value of humanity and real leadership. Are you ready for your legacy? The legacy that matters?
Hello, my beautiful friends. It's Izabela here, the World Messenger, and I'm inviting for another epic episode of Legacy Leader Show. Today, I have fellow Coloradan joining me here on a conversation that is going to be ranging on such amazing topics. What it takes to be a professional athlete and put your heart in and put out, depending on scenario and situation, and also how to find a second chance in life to do what you're really passionate about. So without further ado, I'm going to have a chance to hear directly from Jeremy Anton Anderson. And Jeremy, welcome. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining. And obviously, we're here on the Legacy Leader Show, people that are doing some amazing impact in our community and making difference. And before we dive into that, do you mind sharing a little bit about your early upbringing and how did you get into pro skiing?
So I was raised in Upper Michigan. I was born in Detroit, and then we moved to the Upper Peninsula when I was around 8. And I had skied a few times before then. My dad had me on skis from an early age. He was a youth pastor and also a camp director. And then he took a full-time camp director position in Upper Michigan, and we were out in the middle of nowhere. And so one of the ways I would keep myself entertained was I'd build jumps and out, we had plenty of snow in Upper Michigan. The area that we were at would receive, well over 300 inches of snow a year, and plenty of snow to push around, and we'd ride behind snowmobiles and just developed a passion for the sport. And as soon as I was able to get myself around on a snowmobile or a dirt bike, I started going to the ski hill. I could ride my snowmobile all the way to the local ski hill in Pine Mountain in Iron Mountain, Michigan. And that was one of the world's largest ski jumps was actually there. And so there was a really good Nordic sports presence up there. And there's actually some Olympic training facilities in Upper Michigan. And so there's a lot of opportunity for winter sport athletes up there. And I just took the opportunity and ran with it. And I always loved to go fast and ski hard. And it was a good place to cut my teeth on it.
Fast and furious ski jumping. Yeah. Okay, those risky ski jumps. Wow. Okay. And then you start building that more as a professional athlete then later on, right?
Yeah. So, I started skiing in ski tournaments, did a lot of mogul skiing. And I had friends that ended up in the Olympics at Lillehammer and then again in Salt Lake City, and for different sports. One was speed skating, the other, two were, different Nordic sports like ski jumping, moguls and whatnot. And I never was quite to their level. And I didn't really like judge sports. So, one of the passions that I really had was for exploration, big mountains, getting high in the mountains. And one of the things with traveling for ski tournaments exposed me to was just how big and grand the mountains were in Canada and throughout the Rockies. And so in the mid-90s, I moved out to Colorado to pursue that dream of skiing big mountains and mountaineering. And a couple of years after I moved out here, I was on Denali and skiing the Meshnar Couloir. So,
wow.
So it was just, that really sprung me into a life that I really wanted to pursue. And just kind of work was just something to fund the passion at that point.
That's amazing. And I love what you said earlier, that you were not maybe as good as those that competed and you did not like competition and judged types of sports. Because a lot of times people have illusion, right? Like I'm the greatest, and then they're not really so much self-aware to have this self-awareness and know, but also to know yourself so well to know I don't like this, because we're always seeing this interesting gray area between pro athletes and their responsibility versus coaches and the judges and everybody around that rallied them. So I'm curious, how was that experience for you when you had to kind of be in that gray area and play, and then what did you learn from it?
I think what I learned was I really wanted to be responsible for my successes and failures, and I didn't want to leave it up to anybody else. I think that was the biggest lesson that I learned from that is, you could do the same trick as the last guy, have the same time, and for whatever reason, maybe, you opened up just a quarter more than the other guy, and they're drilling down, or maybe you were tighter, but it didn't look as big as the other guy because you were tighter on your trick, and so you got downgraded. And that felt like I was doing something for someone else. And what I really wanted to, at that point, I had the realization that I really wanted to do something for myself, and I really wanted to live a life where my achievements were based upon my own, judging of successes and failures.
Wow, that is very powerful. And I would have to say, just from interviewing so many athletes and coaches when I was writing my first book, so many of them didn't have that insights. And you went from it to coach's perspective. So kudos when you define that so early. And obviously being in Colorado, it's so much to love here. It's the gorgeous mountains, great scenery, and opportunity truly to explore, but also take an expedition others with you. So tell us a little bit about that. So I can't even pronounce. Being on the mountains and can't even pronounce. Sorry. Okay, giving up.
Right.
Mountaineering. Sorry.
There we go. Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why, I visited, parts of Canada when I was trying to decide where I wanted to live, in Montana, Wyoming, down to Colorado. And one of the reasons why I settled in Colorado is just because of the basis of more specific, not necessarily skiers, but more mountaineers that I wanted to associate myself with, because that was the skill set that I was really lacking at that point. And I really wanted to learn the tools of the trade, forming an expedition, equipment, the ins and outs. And I linked up with some great guys throughout the early years that really gave me a lot of coaching. And living in the Denver Valley, you get to climb year round on rock, and then you can just go up and you can ice climb and ski at the same time. And it doesn't always have, some of the most stable snowpack. It gets pretty dangerous. So those are all things that you experience and can experience on different mountains in the same trip. And so I thought it was important to be able to be in an environment where I could work on all those skills together.
Wow, that is so true. Yeah. And not only for you to know, but if it's responsible for the group and crew, right? How do you help others to go through expedition and have a good experience and be safe, right?
Yeah, I think that's one thing as I've gotten older and I've been on some expeditions, is just that, things that I've worked really hard on. I mean, it's the same in business. You pay attention to different details, you work on your skill set. You don't realize how valuable that is to others because it becomes matter of fact for yourself. And that's not to inflate my ego or anything like that. But I think when you have a skill set, sometimes you take that for granted, and it becomes, passe for, and just not a forethought as much, like, oh, I need to be attentive to this because it's just in the back of your mind. It's habitual. And it's amazing how that lends itself to being valued on, just about any type of expedition. I get invites all the time, and to the point where, I had to be pretty selective over the last several years.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, because a lot of times people think looks easy, but it is a lot of skills and technique behind it. And I'm sure from there you'll continue to build some your inner muscle, not only in the mindset, skill set, and obviously your physical ability. So do you mind sharing for anybody that is listening, how would you differentiate from regular people in terms of that they just do average stuff, right? Everything you've been obviously doing, it's taking this risk, facing these crazy drops and doing really risky stuff. And of course, it gives adrenaline, but also gives the fear factor. How did you overcome all of that?
I think it's, you start out small, and then you just keep pushing yourself, pushing, the environment around you, seeking new challenges. But I would say that one of the things that a lot of people look at is like, oh my God, I can't believe you just did that. Or you ski that stuff, or, you soloed this rock or whatever, is if you toss the keys to your grandma and all of a sudden she decides to drive 200 miles an hour, you're probably going to be freaked out of your fucking mind. Right. You're just going to be white knuckled. But if you hop into, a NASCAR with Jeff Gordon and he's tooling around the oval at 200 miles an hour, you might be a little freaked, but you're going to be like, okay, this guy's done it before. He's in control. And it's years and years and years that he's built that. He didn't, the first time he turned on a car, he didn't drive 200 miles an hour. So I think it's kind of like that, you build up the skill set over time, and eventually it's not that you're immune to risk, because, part of the reason why I'm still alive and at 45 and, getting ready to turn 46 in October this year is because, there's been a lot of risk mitigation. There's been a few situations where I've been lucky, but I think a lot of the luck that I've had has also been because of the skill set that I've had and the baseline performance that I've maintained throughout a long period of time as an athlete.
I love what you said there, because yes, we have to do something despite of the fear, but also we need to understand when it's true danger, right? And differentiate the fear versus danger. And danger is the one obviously to get us killed, but fear is the one to get us either stuck or something that we really need to internally overcome it. And a lot of times people have a challenge with that. So how that served you, because obviously after all of these things, you've been doing very interesting work. So do you mind sharing a little bit from that social perspective and social impact, as well, obviously doing something completely different and being very successful in, which is real estate, right?
Yeah, that's a really big question. And I think there's a lot of answers to that, because I think, back up. I think when I was younger and I was starting to do this, I had experienced some emotional and physical trauma as a kid. And I think that allowed me to compartmentalize some of the initial fear when you take on a hobby or a sport like I have over the course of a lifetime. And that helped build that baseline. And the other thing is, as I've gotten older, as far as mitigation of risk and everything, what I've been able to do is I've been able to recognize that it's not days on the mountain, it's quality days, willingness to say no, willingness to, not even go because I know I'm not in the right frame of mind, and just say, you know what, snow conditions I probably have had, over 20 friends within my community that have died in the last 3 years that are seasoned veterans of the sport. And it's been hard to watch, but at the same time, I'm just like, oh, those are situations that maybe when I was younger, I might have pushed a little bit more, but as I'm older, I'm just like, it doesn't matter if I get, 20 days on the mountain or 160 days, in the mountains. It's more about, having quality days and staying alive at this point. And that's kind of how the last decade has been for me. I say all that because I think each one of those aspects has given me insight and drive into, that kind of the entrepreneurship that I've developed. And, there is, I think the ability to look within has been the biggest thing, and to understand that, just about any business functions off of the same thing, whether you're Amazon or you're a transactional real estate agent, they're both service-oriented businesses. People don't go to Amazon to buy a specific product. They go to Amazon because of the services they receive. And the same thing goes with, real estate transactions, property management, which is the business that I'm in, is everything is really services oriented. And so what you have to do is you have to be like, are the services that I need to provide to the clients to make them happy, is that something that makes me happy as well? Do I feel fulfilled in providing those services? It's not getting excited about a product. It's not getting excited about this website you're designing. It's not getting excited about, this, home you're selling or, book you're writing or anything like that, because even the book, it's just a bunch of words on paper, right? What service are you actually providing those people? And are you excited about that? And I think that translates into really positive business relationships. And that's something that I drew away from, my first decision not to compete anymore. My second decision to stay in my lane that I wanted to was ski mountaineering, create that baseline for my life and do whatever work I could find at that point that would fit into that lifestyle. And then transferred into, I learned about myself, and I learned that I really enjoy problem solving. I really enjoy the fulfillment of a multi-client situation that is with property management and providing services on a tiered level that are often complicated, and you have to have conflict resolution within two clients that you actually have to serve. So it's been pretty enjoyable so far.
I love, and thank you for backing up and sharing that, because obviously it is about it's a critical thinking. It's about critical thinking, decision making, self-awareness, and then also be able to not be influenced, but know what is good for you. And a lot of times people don't know that. And I'm sorry to hear about loss of so many of your friends, but it is also pointing out that a lot of times when we're careless, this is where danger is, right? Careless with our own life, careless with whatever might be going on. And that really also affects and impacts negatively others. And that carelessness can really carry a lot of pain, a lot of damage, a lot of issues. We see this personally and professionally, but we're also seeing with a lot of people that are still in development of who they are, right? They're still figuring out. And we're all kind of all work in progress, but we're also the masterpiece in many ways. So it's beautiful to see how your skills also transition and translate depending whatever you do. And seems like also success continues, right? What do you think it's a huge attribute for that? Because a lot of times we see people get somewhere, then they crash, they cannot get again, they're not sure, and they go through so much of that change. How that success continuously stays in your trajectory?
That's another really broad, deep question. I think if I had to surmise it, and something that you just talked about is carelessness, I would say that the other thing that blinds people is obsession, right? And I think you get obsessed about the wrong things. And it's you can break down a business plan by I want to make X amount of dollars a year, right? And then you break it down by how many widgets you have to sell to make that money, how many services you have to provide. But I think when you're obsessed on that dollar amount, you lose your vision for what you're actually trying to accomplish. And I think one of the biggest things that I really try to tell my team and people within my company is that we have a certain vision, we have a certain set of principles, and we have a certain mission. And sometimes you win some and you make money, and sometimes you lose something and you make money. And as the leader, I'm not held up to my salary. It doesn't have to be a certain point, because I know that if that vision and those that mission statement and that level of care and service that we are providing all of our clients, whether they're tenants, owners of any of our buildings, and protecting our assets, that money will come eventually. And I'll eventually, have the presence that I want in different markets that I want, that I can set forth as an individual goal. But really, I think where people lose it is they're like, oh, I'm a failure. I didn't make this money. I haven't reached my goal. Well, if your goal is just money, then it really doesn't matter what you're doing, right? You're not obsessed about, you're not passionate, or you're not obsessed about what's going on right in front of you and sweeping in the corners. Or, it's not that as a CEO or president of a company, a founder, an owner, that you're the one who needs to be the one who's sweeping in the corners. But you need to have the skill set and the ability to pick up that broom, sweep the corners, say, this is why we're sweeping in the corners. We're keeping these corners clean, to your employees and your team. And if you can cast that vision, you can come in, you can audit your systems of management and say, hey, this is where we're failing, this is where we're offline from our vision. I think that helps center you. And it doesn't make you a micromanager. It makes you stay on track because you're not removing yourself and out there on a ship in the middle of the ocean by yourself trying to hunt Moby Dicks. It's just, it won't work.
Love it. Love that visual and that example. But you're spot on. And specifically right now, right, when everything is shaking, I feel like people are grabbing so desperately and for the control, whatever that means to them, right? And because they're so uncomfortable with so much change, with magnitude of change and lack of control, that to the point that they're actually creating a reverse effect from what they truly desire, and as a result impacting negatively everybody else around them.
Yeah.
So great leadership and vision point, definitely, please.
Yeah, I think, to that point is one thing. I'm a member of a couple of different leads groups where you have business owners that come together, and there are people right now because of, government policy around COVID and everything that are actually thinking about getting out of their business, like selling off their business. And we're talking very, very successful people, but they've gotten so obsessed with the nut that they want to make every month and make it annually, that they don't realize that, hey, this is time for a reset. Let's analyze things. Maybe we can change the structure of our company. I just had coffee this morning with somebody who's just like, I think I need to change my entire focus. I'm just going to start completely over. And I was talking to her, I'm like, I don't think you need to start completely over. There's low-hanging fruit out there in your industry. You just have to be able to go pick it off the tree. And I think that's the thing, is everybody gets obsessed. Like, I mean, this is the crazy thing. I was sharing with her the amount of money that I actually make off of $1,500 condo rental. And her jaw dropped. She was like, you make that little off one individual property? She's like, why do you even take them? I'm like, because it builds to something bigger. And it's practice for my team to practice and implement everything so that we can handle the bigger projects. If we can't handle the little stuff and we can't take on that stuff or service those clients, then there's no reason why we could take on something bigger. And it was just like this aha moment in her mind of like, oh, wow, I'm stepping over nickels to pick up, to chase this, $50,000 deal, dollar bills, whatever it is. And there's so many other people chasing that as well. That everybody wants the big paycheck, that they don't realize that you can build up a great baseline of business by just picking up that low-hanging fruit and treating those people as if they are the big fish that you're ultimately after.
I love your attitude. That is fantastic. And it's tremendous reflection of your leadership. And you're spot on. If we don't appreciate small things, we're not going to appreciate bigger stuff. And that attitude is putting so many companies not only to lose their clients, but also frankly out of the business, right? So, and if everything, how we treat the people, as from janitor to the president of the company, tells what we value, what matters to us. And I think that is huge and tremendous opportunity for everyone to really, that is watching and listening, to be reminded of. So, and you spot on, we're used to have these stretch goals. We used to have these insane expectations and so much pressures that a lot of that was just projection of something that was stressed us out more, that is not realistic. And at the same time, we're just going to fail because we not only have support, but we frankly cannot believe we can even achieve that. So from Kate, what you're doing is actually reversely affecting team. So in terms of team dynamics, since you mentioned now those and great advice that we've been giving, what are you seeing one of the key things to your success, how you treat your team and how you interact, and culture that you're creating in your environment?
I would say the biggest thing is constant reminder of what the vision is, the big picture. I don't care who it is, whether it's an independent contractor who's out, changing out a toilet. If I'm able to have a 5-minute conversation with them about what their protocol should be, it's, hey, this might be a tenant. This, you may run across the business owner while you're out there. Just know that even though you're an independent contractor, you're a representative of the company, and we treat everything with care and respect, not only to the asset, but to the tenant as well. And just keep each, there's a micro message to each employee, but the greater vision is that, we're only, back to the whole services rendered. We can, our entire valuation, there's another property management company around the corner everywhere in the country. And we're measured not on whether or not we, send them their monthly distro, the rents we collect or anything. We're measured on the services that we render. And each time you smile, you shake a hand, you make a call back, you let a tenant know, hey, you don't need to be out of the house as long as we did, because we don't have as many showings on there. Or, commercial property, you see trash on the floor, you don't call the maintenance man, you pick it up. People see that, and they see the care and the empathy that you have over their situation, and that's contagious. That's contagious for the tenants. They treat us in turn that way, and they start looking out for the property as well. And so it all just brings everything back to the most important piece is the asset protection. And so if you can have everybody focused on protecting that asset, because you're offering services, you're picking up the trash as you're walking around the building, even though that's not your job, then the tenants start to do that. And the next thing you know, things are shining, people are happy, everybody's doing acts of service to each other because you got rid of your pride, got rid of your ego, and it's as simple as really just picking up a piece of trash.
I love your attitude. Obviously, for everybody that is listening and watching, being right now in real estate, definitely property management, when economy is going sideways, when people are losing everything, when it's so many different dynamics, and also actually knowing statistically that it's not many really good property management companies out there. And a lot of people are very dissatisfied, right? How they interact, because it's all transactional. It's a great money to be made, but it's not really great in terms of relationships. And as I love what you said, taking away egos, treating your team first the way you want it to be treated, and then treating your tenants with utmost respect. Those are the key success criteria, I would have to say, for Jeremy, even for the larger enterprises, right? In any industry. Sadly, with surveys, with data, they're still not doing it. And I keep always saying is like, takes a specific types of DNA of the human, really, to just exude that. And I love what you said, how infectious they can be. So you see some amazing results and stability. And what would you say for everybody that's watching and listening that are part of really negative toxic energy or culture that are just trying to figure it out how either to sink or swim in the environment they're in or change? What would you tell them to pay attention for, or maybe things that they could do themselves to maybe change that around?
I use the term macro and umbrella a lot in my communications.
My favorite words.
Because
umbrella, I would just say overarching umbrella.
Yeah, and it's because I think a lot of people, when you're trying to drill down and find out how to resolve a situation, people function in that macro and that umbrella word range. Like, yes. And it's like, well, what are they really saying? And I mean, I just did this today with a tenant who was trying to deny showings for one of my leasing agents. And she was frustrated. And I just said, hey, we're functioning in the macro right now. Micro, what does it mean if we have one person that wants to see the property? She's like, I just want to take my dog around the block for the walk. And I just want to know that so I don't have to leave the property for an hour. I'm like, done. And so it's really resolves things. And I think a lot of times we're speaking the same language, but we're saying different things because we use these umbrella words like forgiveness, like you use an umbrella word jealousy, and you're describing these huge, there's so many linear things that could mean. But when you drill down to it, it's like, what does that mean for that person at that moment that they're saying it? And that's what you got to figure out. And that's how you meet people's needs.
Wow.
And that's how you figure things out for yourself too. It's like, stop using umbrella words. I don't let my kids do it. Like when my kids come to me and they're like, Dad, I'm feeling this. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, you're using an umbrella word. Stop. And they'll leave and they'll come back after they think about it for a while.
That is absolutely brilliant, guys. This is phenomenal golden egg. And I love this because also helps with the miscommunication, misperception, right? Helps
Exactly.
also without feeling heard or respected, and can turn any difficult, challenging situation around. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
If you walk away from a conversation and you're taking actionable steps and you have to make assumptions based upon the words somebody else used, that's not a useful conversation. And if somebody else has to do that with yourself, with you, it's not a useful conversation for them, and they're not going to take the right actionable steps. And if you're doing that with yourself, you'll never ever have any good personal growth.
Wow. I cannot agree more, but I'm just so glad it came from you. And again, such an amazing perspective. Because Jeremy, I mean, I'm talking to people in wide ranges, right? From C-suite, Fortune 500 to whatever. And it's so interesting how sometimes we overcomplicate things, right? And how we make it more complex just because of that righteousness or self-importance or justification, whatever might be the case. But in reality, everything is just so simple and so fluid and real, right? And when that is there, everything else is just almost like effortless in a way, right?
It is. And I think a lot of this stuff is habitual, right? You know, we're never taught anything like this in school. And unless you go on a path to self-discovery, or you really try to drill down, why am I having a problem with communicating with other people? How did this conversation go? And, you know, it ended up this way. Why am I not affecting change in myself that I can also affect change in others? And a lot of it comes down to just, you know, the words you're using and how you're effectively communicating that.
Brilliant. I absolutely love it. And that is the key to success, because we're a lot of times just speaking, but we're not communicating. And that is huge difference, right? And then also when we respond, are we having shared understanding? Are we speak just to respond? Or are we speaking based on acknowledging that we heard you, and now let's have another dialogue and another conversation, right?
Yeah, I think you know, you can walk away from a 10-minute conversation without, you know, macro or umbrella words, and or if you use them and you walk away from it and it be done and everybody knows exactly where they need to go, the resolution for a problem. Or if you're using them, you can actually create more conversations, more confusion, and then you create divisions, even with your own company, divisions with your own personal self, and self-doubt at the same time, because you really haven't been drilled down onto what your needs are.
That is so true. And every time we hold that, right, builds up and creates a lot of anger, frustration, of not feeling comfortable, whatever it might be. And then a lot of times we're seeing right now people lashing, right, as a result of that, because they don't know how to self-manage and self-regulate their own emotions and how they fit in either a relationship, or how they fit in the business or with a team, or whatever might be the scenario. So I know you've been doing some also amazing work socially and for social impact. So do you mind sharing a little bit about also this other super awesome person in personal, professional world, obviously, but things that you're so passionate about it and that you're giving and contributing? I'd love to audience to have a chance to see that you can have it all and still be grounded and humble, and also make a tremendous impact and then make a ripple effect. So please.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's been a lot of various things that I've been involved with throughout the years, but the last thing that hasn't fully been announced, a lot of people within, you know, my community know what's coming down the pike, but we, 2 years ago, we went on an expedition in Chile right before the protests, which turned into riots, which turned into a lot of civil disobedience and cops, you know, running over people in cars. You know, it turned just complete insanity. And now to the point where they're trying to elect new government officials and rewrite the Constitution and everything. And it's what has happened is we were down there. We went down to create a new national park, to create a lot of environmental awareness for this incredible region that's 45 minutes outside of Santiago, Chile. And we were going to go ski the mountain. There wasn't enough snow, so it automatically turned into more of an environmental film with that. But also we were down there at this crazy point in time where we were able to see what was going on before when we started the expedition. And then we got out after 23 days being in the interior, no contact other than our inReach, basically weather reports to see, summit days and everything. Got out and it was unbelievable. Like my plane ride down there was packed. My plane ride back, I was one of like 10 people on the plane back to the US.
Wow.
Because the country had almost locked down at that point. So that'll be kind of the last passion project that I've been a part of. But yeah, it's there's lots of different things. It doesn't have to be quite as grand as that people can get involved in. But raising awareness to a lot of the the crazy geopolitical climate has been something that's I love talking about and love raising awareness about. And whenever I do a podcast, I bring stuff like that up because I think it's something that a lot of people need to realize is just how unstable most of the governments are down in South America.
Yes. Yes, and then Chile has such amazing culture, and I remember opportunity to be watching with some of the guys from National Geographic from penguin crossing, and I will never forget. It's like I missed on that opportunity. I regret most of my life. But what I wanted to say, but was just like this amazing opportunity that that's not, conditions are not anymore same, and we're mentally they're not anymore the same, let alone geopolitically, as you mentioned. So when you have opportunity, I feel like seize the day, right? Jump on it. But when things change, we long for something that we used to have, used to see, and it's just so sad when it's such a devastation for such a beautiful culture. And because they're further removed, we don't get as much of the news. And from global perspective, we obviously have to pay attention what's going on and how we can contribute. So.
Yeah, and I think to that point about you don't always see exactly what's happening on the news. There's also a filter based upon what country you're in, where
Yes.
that how your news gets integrated into your platform. And I think the US has a lot of ties to how the government was constructed down there. And I'm perfectly honest, I am a registered libertarian, mostly because I don't want calls from either party.
I don't blame you. Yeah. I do not blame you at all.
I did that and the call stopped. Nobody fundraises with me. Like, that guy's crazy. We're not going to call him. But
yay, I won.
Yeah. But the premise for After Pinochet of the government down in Chile was really formed on an extreme capitalist privatization of everything mentality, and the Chilean people were really left with nothing. And the fare hike on the transportation, the public transportation, is what put everybody over the edge, because they really don't have anything. They don't have any access to natural resources. I think there's something like 2 million people that aren't within 15 miles of drinking water down in Chile, which is crazy for that. You have the Andes right there, and you don't have a natural drinking water source at all. All of the water has been privatized. It's being siphoned off into the mining companies. And as an entrepreneur and a capitalist, I am very, I don't want the government involved in my business, but there's a huge difference between a community coming together and protecting something for the good of everyone. And then signing, and the opposite of that is signing it over and thinking that someone else can run it better than we can run it ourselves. And I think that's the dichotomy between libertarianism, republicanism, Republicans, Democrats, and then socialism is where's that line in between. And the foundation of the government was really trained in the University of Chicago. And they went down there and they decided to do an extreme form of capitalism, and it's really backfired. None of it was really good for the people because they were not able to control their community resources.
Wow, and it's so awful. Thank you for sharing that and giving some great pointers here, because you're right. When we try to force and implement certain models, always work for few, but not for everyone. And
Mhm.
people that are generally very kind and loving and caring and dismissive in many ways because they just want to go about their happy life and day to day, right now are getting the huge brunt of it. And then social economically, we don't have much of middle class there. We have that extreme, very small percentage of wealthy, and everything is just this huge, huge poverty um, um, environment that we see actually something like that that's the detriment uh, in Africa, right? And then you would think that that will change, and because it's, Chile has other precious resources, but again, if all of those are taken away from the people, not investing in infrastructure of the country, then what do you see? It's going to be just horrible. COVID was also very bad for them right now.
Mhm.
Hospital care, access to care. I mean, just some of those basic needs. And when you see things going reversely in modern time, it's heartbreaking, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, I mean, Santiago is an incredible city, but the difference between the haves and the have-nots is, unparalleled in a lot of other areas of South America. I mean, there's a few other cities that probably broach the same disparity of income. But I think, you look at it and we think about, our country in a linear plane. You have, a few hundred years, and there's usually a pathway to accumulate wealth because we've had one government over that time. And we didn't have, socialism, communism, and then, essentially a dictatorship for 30 years like you did down in Chile, and then this extreme form of capitalism where, there was a time where there was supposed to be a transition, and there were a lot of promises made to people like the campesinos. They were supposed to get land, and they went into the mountains and started farming it, cultivating it, and then all of a sudden these big corporations come in and they lock them out of there, and something they spent their whole life doing. It's like, where, how are you sensitive to that? You can't ever make everybody happy, but there's got to be a way to protect culture and still be able to, especially in modern day, when we're seeing it all over the world, and where, corporations can come in, they can still, provide minerals and resources to the community surrounding it and still make a profit. There has to be some way to do that and be sensitive to the fact that, during that period of time when Pinochet was there, I mean, there's very little education going on there. There was basically a lost generation. And if you look at America, we've never really experienced that lost generation time. I mean, some of our native cultures we have, of course, but linearly, there's always been a pathway for opportunity, and there's never been a full generational setback, outside of, some of the stuff that went on in the Western United States in the late 1800s. You know, so it's it's just a completely different culture, and people are constantly swimming upstream, and there's not a lot of upward mobility, I think is what I'm trying to say, even though it is a capitalistic country.
That is such a great insight, and thank you for sharing that. Because what we forget, and specifically right now, what we're seeing that is happening in Afghanistan and other parts, Syria, and all of that. And for me, who grew up in Europe and grew up with initially very socialistic and a little bit of communistic regime, but then lived in Sweden with this socialistic democratic regimes, and being exposed to different ways of being, right, and then coming to very capitalistic environment was a huge adjustment for me, right? Because for me it was like, okay, all of us are contributing, all of us are making difference, let's collaborate, let's make an impact. And then I found this insane competitiveness instead of complementing and contribution, but also found this very unhealthy individualism. And I think that we project and pride ourselves on it, but in reality people are miserable and very unhappy because we're not meant to be so individualistic. We're meant to share and meant to be part of, great family, or have opportunities. And I'm seeing people as a result crippled because they don't know how to coexist. In marriages, that's why we have divorces, or in relationships because we're very unhealthy because of addictions, right? So with that in mind, obviously we have a lot of work to do, don't we?
Yeah, yeah, we definitely do. I think, one of the biggest things that I would say about that is, we we come from a tribal background, right? People want to belong, they want to be part of a community. And there's this illusion that that's a sign of weakness in the United States, especially, is that you have to be this lone wolf. You have to go out and you have to make your own way. And that isolation can breed a lot of depression. And it can honestly, when you're shunned by a community, or you shun a community, you think you might be an individual, you honestly by default join another community. And it could be watching YouTube videos all night long and going down a rabbit hole on some kind of idea and getting crazy thoughts in your head. And I think the biggest thing that I think what you're saying is you have to be personally accountable, right? Yes. You have to be able to look within, but at the same time, you have to be willing to go out there and make yourself accountable to the community that you're in as well. And that's really, it's kind of a crazy thought, because so much of what we have today is people have a private self that's probably really close to what their true self is, and then they have a public self. And when those two, and they're not comfortable with those two things aligning publicly. And it's so crazy that we're talking about this. Is I've had a couple of friends that are going through some really tough times. One's going through some really tough times. The other one has some stunted business growth. And it's so easy to see that the problem is that their private self doesn't align with their public self. And it's not that their private self is bad, right? They may just be doing things that they don't want other people to know about, but if they brought that into the public, everybody who's their core friends would accept them still. Mm-hmm. And then there's the business illusion of success, and I have to maintain this image to be successful, so I can't reveal this part of my private self because I won't have that image of success. And it's crazy in how that separates yourself, and you ultimately don't become accountable to yourself or anyone else because you're constantly revealing the two different things, different sides of you.
And I love that you mentioned that, and we're seeing so many people dancing into that. And I always call leaders out, because you have to be 24/7 in essence who you are. That is exhausting. It's impossible to keep. And ultimately, it's like having two bipolar individuals, right, that you're trying to maintain. And when we're not in sync, when we're not come authentic, then what happens? People sense that. That affects your business, that affects how you're being perceived, but also affects your personal life. And what do you do internally with your family, or whatever might be the case. And more of that authenticity we need really to show. And doesn't matter, it's the best version of ourselves, but the version that we're today, and being comfortable with that. But I love also something I heard years ago that being great advice for me, Izabela. It's like, just when you know that you did the best you could every single day, nothing to worry about it, right? When you show up and Jeremy, you delivered. You did a phenomenal, obviously, interview today, which I'm super thrilled had a chance to talk, but also just being who you are in the core. That is like the most valuable asset as any human being can deliver. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And I would take it one step further, though, is you have to realize that you've done the best that you can within the framework of what you need to do. And that becomes, there's an inward realization and an outward realization. And I was told, my dad had a lot of hyperactivity, was very much a people pleaser. And there's a lot of negative attributes that developed after a lifetime of living that way, that developed his personality, later on in his life. And one of the things that somebody told me when I was behaving that way was, there's a reason why the postal office has the best job security in the United States, because the mail's always got to be delivered tomorrow. And it doesn't matter how much mail you deliver today, there's going to be another bag of it for you tomorrow. And
That is a good one. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So it's just like, you got to do what you can do, but you also realize that you can't do it all. And it's funny, we were in a leadership meeting with my company, and I was talking about how, just defining different roles, different, systems of management, and it doesn't matter, say you're driving down a massive superhighway. There's 8 lanes going the same direction that you are. You're in a Ferrari and you can go 200 miles an hour if you want to. You can go as fast as you want to or as slow as you want to, but you can still only drive in one lane at a time. That's all you got, right? Because your car only fits in one lane at a time. Now you can switch over to this lane for a little while, that lane for a little while, merge across 10 lanes, whatever it is, but you really are only driving in one lane at a time. And that's I think in leadership is one of the biggest things that you need to learn is that, you might be responsible for, things running down all of those lanes, at any given time of the day, but there's only so much you can do. And you've got to pick a lane, plug into it, drive for a little bit, and then merge over to the other lane.
That is brilliant, and love your analogies, and they're so beautifully tying all this together, which also brings another question. When in closing here, Jeremy, obviously you had tremendous successes in life. You already impact communities. You already established your independent individual legacy based on who you are. But everything that you are up to this point and wanted to do more and doing in years to come, could you tell me, what would you like your legacy to be known for? What would you like to be remembered by?
That's really changed over the last couple of years. I think when I was younger, I would love to have died with an ice axe and skis on my back on the mountain. But these days, I also had a lot of broken interpersonal relationships at that time because, there was a lot of rugged individualism in me, and I was gone for, up to 6 months of the year, away from family, friends, and a lot of interpersonal relationships. So moving into my latter years, I really want to leave behind a legacy of care, empathy, and just strong interpersonal relationships in the business community, in the athletic world, and within my own family and within my children. And I want them, because I think if I'm able to establish that with them and those people that are closest to me, that will transfer to others as well.
Wow, that is so powerful, and I love it. And obviously, they're watching, right? You have to lead by example
Yeah.
and build the healthy, beautiful humans that are going to be one day also as successful as their dad, which is fantastic. But also, obviously, a trajectory what you bring into community, and I love that. And in closing, Jeremy, do you mind just sharing where the audience that is listening and watching can find you and reach out to you? Because obviously, not only you're doing so many things well, but you're also obviously creating phenomenal community around you. So if they wanted to ping you, get to know you, or explore other opportunities, where that would be?
I think the best place is social media. I have 3 different channels. One, I am starting a podcast. I've recorded a couple episodes so far. So that'll
Yay,
be
what is the
fun.
name of it?
It's called Solitary Wolves. And it's going to be about people that aren't running with the pack. They're out, blazing their own way. And obviously, investing into a community, and, there'll be all kinds of different types of people on there. There'll be outdoor athletes, climbers, skiers, snowboarders, and then there'll be a lot of entrepreneurs, and there'll just be some characters that are out there doing some rogue things that I think are really cool. So it'll be interesting. And that's at Solitary Wolves on Instagram. My personal channel is at JSki Climb. And then my company is VIP Real Estate Management, and you can follow along with, what we have going on there. There'll be some other things that'll develop, like Property Manager Minute. We're going to start developing that. And that's at VIP REPM. And that's also VIPREPM.com.
That's brilliant. We'll make sure that we have those links for everybody also to easily find you in the summary of this podcast and the show. We're super grateful you had a chance to spend time with us and share amazing trajectory and golden nuggets. And how did you transfer those skills and everything you learn to be amazing human you are here today? So thank you, Jeremy, being with us on Legacy Leaders Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Legacy Leader Show. If you enjoyed the content and had a positive experience, then please leave us a positive rating. In addition, leave us a positive review whenever you are listening on whatever platform there might be. Make sure your friends and family also know about the benefit and value that we provide and what we have to offer. Cheers.